What's up, y'all? It's K.E. Lewis, award-winning author of the book Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane, and also author of Because of Dads. Today's video is very different than the other videos that I actually create on this channel, in that I won't be teaching today. This is actually a story about how I got started in traditional publishing. I typically get asked this question all the time. It's like, you wanted to be a writer, but why children? Or you wanted to be a writer, but how did you discover children's writing? Because it seems so exclusive. Seems like there's this hush and whisper network around the topic. How did you end up over there, KE? So I guess I should start by telling you that I wanted to be a writer since I was 8 years old. My mom made sure that my shelves were balanced, in that every time my teachers would send me home with a writing assignment or a reading assignment, and that work had been written by a white author, she made sure that I read something that balanced my understanding of what writing was by giving me a story written by a black author. And I really loved how, this made me feel even at a young age, and I wanted to mimic it. I have poetry collections that I think are still in the closet at my mom's house, stories that I've attempted even as a kid. And so I went off to school to be an English major. And as an English major in undergrad, I was working on 2 novels because I didn't want to write for children. I wanted to write for adults. This is how stuff be working, y'all. It be happening. Even when you don't want to be in a space, you end up in there anyway. But I was working on 2 novels. One I had already completed, drafted completely. It was just waiting on me to look at it with fresh eyes. The second one was halfway done. Now, Thanksgiving, senior year, both my computer crashed and my flash drive were lost within a day of each other. And it was devastating for me because not only was that novel and a half on there, but my term paper, 14 pages, which was due the Monday after Thanksgiving break, and I was completely distraught. I had to cut my Thanksgiving break short, run back to campus, spent 48 hours in the library trying to reproduce a 14-page paper. Ended up only being 8 pages at the end of the day. And I finished that semester very strong. I think I had all A's that semester. But after completing that semester, I went into a slump. I didn't want to write anything because I had lost a novel and a half. And the only juice I had left, I put into that term paper. And so I graduated, went through a master's program, and I began to teach high school. And when I taught high school, I wasn't in line with what I wanted to do in my life. I went into teaching high school because teaching high school, it paid the bills, right? But it wasn't in line with what I wanted to do as a writer. And in fact, in some ways, it was soul sucking. Although I enjoyed my students, I wasn't walking in my purpose. So I went into this slump and what would become a 3-year depression. And so from the time that I graduated undergrad through my first 2 years of teaching, I was in a slump because the master's program I went through only required a year additional to the bachelor's degree. But in this slump and morbidly depressed, I think I gained about 20 pounds or something like that. But anyways, I ended up switching jobs, leaving teaching high school and working at the university. When I went back to the university, I had more time to write. I began to read again because reading was actually something that I had forsaken. The only thing that I was reading when I was teaching high school was the work that I would assign and the work that I was teaching from. But as far as reading for pleasure, I didn't do that. So I was advisor at the university, and I was speaking with my supervisor at the time, who I came to know and grow fond of. And one day we were out to lunch, and she said, "Hey, Kenneth, I know what happened to you and your novels, and I know you're trying to get started again with writing. I see they're calling for diversity in children's lit. Why don't you go and start small and work your way back up to long form? Because it might be easier." Famous last words. Yeah. For those of you who know children's literature. So I didn't think it was a bad idea. I went not that day, but 2 days later, I went to Barnes and Noble and I went over to the children's section and I picked up 10 books off the shelf. And I went to the Barnes and Noble cafe, ordered me a caramel macchiato, sat down, and I read those 10 books. And I liked those 10 books. And so the next day, when I got off from work, I went to Barnes and Noble and I picked out 10 more books. And I sat down with those books and I read those books and I liked those books. And every day for several days in a row, I would go to Barnes& Noble, read the books, put them back on the shelf, but read the books, see what I was, paid attention to what I was seeing, and started researching how to break into children's literature. When I researched how to break into children's literature, I stumbled across Josh Funk's old blog to talk about just the different things, the different qualities and characteristics of writing for children. And then I came across the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators, and I saw that they were having a conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, about 3 months ahead. So I ended up registering for the conference. And while I am waiting on the conference, I'm still reading every day, still researching how to get into this business, but not quite writing just yet because something I read that said you should read 400 picture books before you attempt writing one. I'm a very literal person, although I'm creative. It's something about my mind that's very literal. It's probably the kid in me, but I took that to heart. And in fact, I read 600 books before I attempted one. And when I went to the conference in Charlotte, by the time 3 months was up, I was 600 deep in picture books, and I had attempted 2 manuscripts, both which were inspired by pieces of my life. And when I got to the conference, the world lit up. I saw different sessions about writing picture books, the rule of three, show and not tell, these practical tips and tools that I could use to strengthen my writing, was able to actually see people being critiqued in real time, getting to network with folks, came across some people I met who are now in my critique group, and my critique group is 8 years strong. Came across folks who I still see today because we are in the writing community. Did I get a deal at the conference? No, I didn't go there for a deal, but also you shouldn't go there for a deal either because most deals do not happen at conferences. Deals that happen at conferences are usually conversations that have been brewing for a while, and two, are made between an editor and an established writer, and that agent is probably already there. So all the key people are there and they probably plan that in advance, but rarely does a newbie get signed at a conference. So just sticking that out there. If you're going to go to a conference, definitely temper your expectations and go there for networking and to become a better writer and to also learn the industry, learn the business. So went to SCBWI that fall and left SCBWI, and those 2 manuscripts that I had written were trash. Absolute trash. I saw the quality of writing, the quality of writers, also having read so many different books. And so I needed to keep going. So I kept going. I kept reading picture books. I kept practicing my writing and was even okay with shelving some of the stories that I had written before. So fast forward to that April, I went to Quayle, which is the Color of Children's Literature Conference in New York. Went there in April, smaller conference. It was definitely more intimate and I was able to get more FaceTime with folks. Went there, lovely conference, and I found more people to network with and I learned more about the business. And I continued to search and search for everything I could learn. And at the time, I was like, ooh, I should start querying agents. Well, at that time, I wasn't quite ready, but I queried them anyway. And so I started querying agents at that time and just started working and continued to practice my craft. Practice, 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 practice. And got no after no after no after no after no after no after no. And this was back in 2018 now. We're at 2018. And so I started this journey when I was in college. I went off to college in 2010 and now we're at 2018. So 8 years. I decided that I was going to take a sabbatical. I was going to pull out of my retirement because I was young enough at the time to pull it out and make it back. I was going to pull out of my retirement and take 2 years to focus on my craft and to get my feet wet in children's literature. Make sure that I devoted some concentrated focus. And so I quit my job at the time working at the university and I decided that I was going to take a leap and actually throw everything I had at children's literature, particularly picture books. So for a year's worth of time, I paid up all the conferences that I would attend, the travel that I needed to attend those conferences. And I was fortunate enough to be living in a house with a family friend who was very generous at the time, and my rent was only $350 a month. Whew, won't he do it? But she also believed in me as a writer. She's gone now, bless her heart. Margaret Moore, her name. That was my girl. But Yeah, where was I going with that? So in taking this sabbatical, I actually structured my day. Before I took the sabbatical, I made a vision for my life. This is where I am. This is where I want to be. So in that sabbatical, I actually attended a couple of workshops at the Highlights Foundation, which is now Boys Mill Press. I attended a nonfiction and a poetry workshop out there. I went to an unworkshop during that time as well. So I went there 3 times. I went to another SCBWI conference, another Quayle conference, and I began to expand my network, meeting different people at these places and keeping in contact by sending email or text messages, just genuine relationship building. Then after I took my leap, the pandemic happened and it made me focus in a little more because everything shut down and I couldn't go outside. So I was able to hone my craft a bit more. I paid attention more to form and story and creating stories that weren't on the shelf. I began to query more. There was a time where I had stopped querying, but I started back querying. And when I queried this time, I got an agent who took interest in me. And that agent loved the manuscript for my upcoming book called Devontae's Shoes. I had already written this book here behind me, Never Take Your Ride on a Plane, which was also in that stack of work that she wanted to see. I had also written Because of Dads, which is behind me here. And so all those books were in the first stack of books that she wanted to see. Because of Dads was sold by my second agent, though not the first one. And we'll talk about, in a later video about agents, agent agreements, and when it works, when it doesn't, and how to shift the relationship very professionally. So we'll talk about that later. However, let's get back to the matter at hand. Had an agent who was interested in me, and we actually took some time that summer to refine Devontae's Shoes and to groom it and to tease some of the language there and make sure that it was ready for sale. Went out on submission, and that September we had an offer for Devontae's Shoes, and I sold my first book to Candlewick Press. It was a 2-book deal, so Devontae's Shoes, and then the second book was undetermined at the time, but that second book is Grandpa's Roses now. So Granddad's Roses. I keep forgetting what I name these things. You know, they change. And that's how I ended up in the business. It was me starting very young, but also coming to it with my writing chops from my English major, coming into children's writing, practicing, studying, learning page turns and structure and book baking, just immersing myself into the business to learn the business so I could understand which editors I want to work with, which illustrators I would love to collaborate with, learning royalty figures, learning good deal versus a bad deal, seeing those folks who are now my friends flourish and learning from them in the process as well. The thing about it is once I sold that 2-book deal, then I sold another book deal, which was Never Take Your Ride on a Plane. Never Take Your Ride on a Plane was actually my second book deal, even though it was my first title to come out. You'll find in this industry that things are not linear, that you could sell a book today and that book might not come out until 2 or 3 other books come out in front of it. It all depends on, different variables. As for instance, Never Take Your Ride on a Plane was sold in 2021. It didn't come out until 2025. Originally, it was supposed to come out in 2023, but because of COVID, we had a paper shortage and also Isabel's schedule and printing. There's just a whole bunch of variables that I talk about in another video that can affect how long it takes for a picture book specifically to go from idea to publication. So make sure you check out that video. And this is just one of many stories that I would tell. This is only the story how I broke into the industry, the steps that I've taken to land here. There are other conversations that we will have, like how to have the difficult conversation with your publisher or your agent, how to advocate for your worth, how to call attention to themes, topics, or ideas that others might not be aware of because of cultural differences. We will have all those conversations on this channel. Hey, if you found this video useful, tune into my next video, which talks about why it takes a book so long to go from idea to publication, where I get deeper into the process and you learn the steps that you need to take as a writer as you learn the craft, build your idea, and prepare it for the shelf. Also, don't forget that there are free resources on my website at kelewis.world to actually help you navigate this experience, because it's a big one. All right, till next time.